Justin? A balancing act. Academics, athletics, pressure. Practices every evening, homework at night, proper rest, traveling for competition, games on the weekend, even during the week, living expenses, always in the public eye. What does it mean to be a student athlete? I'd like to welcome everybody to the Institute on National Affairs at Iowa State University. This is a panel discussion we'll have this afternoon with student athletes here at Iowa State University. The Institute has been going on this entire week. The subject has been democracy. We heard a little bit yesterday on student athletes, and today we're going to hear from student athletes themselves. I'd also like to encourage you to attend the lecture this evening entitled Goodbye Columbus, Public Culture in an Age After Empire by Henry Louis Gates. That's at 8 p.m. today in the Sunroom. And tomorrow night in Benton Auditorium. Oh, this lecture is moved to tomorrow night in Benton Auditorium. Okay, so we encourage you to come and see Henry Louis Gates. Also, I'd like to wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. We're at the time when college athletics is growing and growing. Big TV contracts, big college bowl purses, more NCAA infractions, more students leaving early for professional sports. We heard through the course of the Institute how the NCAA is in a reform on improving the whole picture of athletics, improving things for the betterment of the athlete, making sure there's quality competition as well as quality instructing while students are in school, considering athletics and academics as a whole. Here at ISU, as well as other Division I programs, the level of competition is so great, it takes as much energy to prepare for competition as it does to prepare for final exams. What we're going to do this afternoon is we have 7 of our ISU athletes, and what we're going to do is talk about the pressures that we face dealing with academics and athletics. And what we'll do is we'll go down the line and have each athlete introduce himself or herself so that you know whom you'll be speaking to, and then we'll open it up to the floor for any questions. And we'll start with Gene Williams.
Hello, I'm Gene Williams. I played football here at Iowa State for 4 years. I'm graduating this May, and my eligibility is up.
Hello, my name is Doug Collins. I'm a member of the Iowa State basketball team, and I came here from a junior college. This is my 2nd year here, and I will be graduating in December of next year.
My name is Seth Canetta Davis. I'm a member of the women's basketball team, and I will be graduating next December.
My name is Mimi Walls. I'm on the cross country and track teams at Iowa State. This is my 3rd year, and I'll be graduating, I guess, in a couple.
I'm Lisa Skidmore. I'm also on the track and cross country teams, and I'll be graduating this May.
I'm Mark DeBrov. I'm on the football team. This is my 3rd year here. I have 2 years left.
I'm Tracy Graham. I'm on the volleyball team. This is my 4th year here, but I have another year of eligibility.
Okay, now we're going to treat this sort of like Donahue. If anybody has any questions, what I'd like you to do is raise your hand. I'll come over to the mic so you can stand up and be heard and have any questions for the athlete. So we'll start. Does anybody have any questions right away? Okay, we have one over here.
First of all, I just want to condemn, I want to praise, I'm always condemning things. I want to praise all the athletes for your dedication and work. The question I want to ask is a difficult one. For instance, at the University of Michigan, you have 105,000 people coming to the games. paying about $16 a ticket. That means that the university would be amassing, well over $1 million for every home game. Does it bother you that people who they come to see, the players, for instance, University of Michigan football players, will not see barely any of that money? Should college athletes be paid? I believe they should, and I believe actually that a lot of football and basketball players are being exploited, and I just wanted to know what you thought about that.
Well, I can say that I wouldn't turn down any money anybody wanted to offer me. So, but it's probably one of the biggest debates going on right now in college sports. And I can't really tell you a whole lot about it because I don't work in the accounting department at ISU athletic department, and I don't know how much money they bring in. I do know that they did offer me a scholarship, and they pay for all my materials and take care of everything I need. But sometimes it gets rough for an athlete because right now, I'm only pulling in. My school and my books and everything are paid for, but I'm only pulling in $217 a month for rent. And that's not a whole heck of a lot. And since the NCAA doesn't allow us to have jobs, which it would be difficult anyway with all the pressures with school and athletics, it gets difficult sometimes. It gets difficult to just go to a movie on a weekend because you don't have any extra money. Being compensated for college athletics is a big issue, but it's not something you can answer very easily. Both sides have their own opinions, and it would be nice if you could get compensated a little bit. I'm not saying athletes, should be put on a huge salary scale or like that in college, but it is very difficult since you can't have a job and. You want to do something on the weekends, you want to go out or whatever, and sometimes it can be difficult.
Does anyone else have a response to that question?
I think
Right.
I think that there is a possibility that it needs to be looked into as far as what Gene was saying, that athletes do need to be put on some type of salary, because if you have kids that are coming from the unsavourable side of society and they have no income, and as Gene said, we are not allowed to work because of being on a full scholarship, which is hard, and that also makes us unavailable for any type of grant or aid. It becomes very difficult to meet just your simple basic necessity needs. So I think it is an issue that we need to look into and debate over very carefully as to concerning athletes receiving money.
It does become a concern to some athletes. To give an example, when I first came to Iowa State, the athletic program could pay for certain things I needed, for my major was architecture. And the athletic department could pay for certain things like drawing pencils and T-squares and things of that sort. But after a couple of years, they weren't able to do that anymore. So there was a couple of packs of things that I might have needed for my major and other students, like other art majors, that we had to pay for on our own. And sometimes it became sort of a problem when certain things other than just necessary books were needed for classwork. Does anybody have another question? What?
I just wanted to know how the minor sports felt about that, because it's okay. You say you want to give money, they should be paid, but are the universities willing to pay the minor sports like the track and the volleyball and the golf? Well, I don't think golf's on scholarship, but the minor sports, tennis, is the university going to be willing to pay those athletes and the ones that aren't on full scholarship? Who should get the money and who shouldn't?
I would like to answer that question. I think because of the time and the amount of effort that we put into the sports, whether it's minor or not, we should, because we may not, women's basketball may not put in as much as far as bringing in money as the men's basketball team, but we put in the same amount of hours and time, which takes away from our academics also. So I think being a student athlete is just like having two jobs, actually. You're having to balance the fact of coming every day, it is a job because you have to come every day to a practice for 2-3 hours, not on top of, as Paul said, trying to study and if you want an education in order to maintain in this world. So I think whether it's irrelevant as to whether or not it's a minor or a major sport because of the time that is put into it. Yes, each sport should be looked at.
What about, do you really have ample time to do schoolwork? I mean, is practice time too much? I know there's practice every evening. I know sometimes practices run late. What about practice time? Do we need to cut back on practice time, or is practice time, is it fine the way it is, or do we need a little bit more time to do schoolwork? What about you, Mimi? What do you think?
Right now, I think with the program that we have set up, I have plenty of time for my schoolwork, and I have plenty of time for my social life, and I have, I can balance everything out well. I don't know some of the other sports that may put in a little bit more time than us, or I have roommates on the swim team, and I know they put in a little bit more time than we do just because of their conditioning, the way they set up, what times they can practice. And I know that sometimes they get a little bit stressed about their schoolwork and stuff because they spend a little bit more time than we do. But I think even if, they asked me for another hour and a half a day, I would still have enough time for my schoolwork.
What do you think, Doug?
I feel that the practices should be cut for the simple fact that we don't have enough time to study. Like, for example, men's basketball, we go to study table from 1 to 3, and then we jump right into basketball practice. And once you come out of basketball practice, your mind is not focused on academics. You're thinking about how tired you is, you think about how hungry you is, you need some rest. Then we come back from 7 to 9, then everybody, they're not together. They're not focused on academics. Then another example is that we travel, through the weekday. Like we went to Hawaii for 2 weeks. We was going out of school for like 3 weeks. Then we come back. It's hard to get focused on academics and you go on for 3 or 4 weeks at a time and then come back and, you have that kind of pressure on you. You have to make this certain standard grade point average or, do this perspective in class. So I think the practices should be cut a little shorter.
Well, the big problem that I found is that because our practice time is later in the evening from 3 to 6, most teachers or professors only have certain office hours, and usually I have classes all day. So in order to meet with them, I have to schedule an appointment with them. And practice time also can run into, we have study sessions or lab hours or help sessions, and sometimes I have to miss that because I have practice or there's other things that I can't do because of the practice time.
Like everybody mentioned earlier, it really is a job to give you a basic idea on what a football player, I can't speak for the other sports. In season, I can tell you that we can't have any classes that go past 2, basically, because we need to be down there for practice, and practice generally doesn't start till 4 or 4:30. So usually, the average football player gets out around 1 or so, and he shoots straight down to the stadium, takes a bus or drives down to the stadium, and he's not getting out of there. He's down there from 1, he has to get taped, he has to lift, any treatments he needs for any injury. He's down there from anywhere from 1 to 6:30 or 1 to 7, and this is all during the week, and you're putting in 25, 30 hours just for football during the week, not to mention you have the game on Saturday where you have to spend the night in the hotel Friday night, and go through a series of meetings that last until 9:30 with your position coaches or whatever. Then you play the game on Saturday, you go home, you're exhausted, all you want to do is sleep, you rest for a while, and then if you want to go out, or, I'm not going to lie to you and say we all stay home and study Saturday night, but, and then you think it would be over, but then against Sunday, we have to come back in and watch game film and start lifting all over, and the week starts all over again, so you're putting in at least 25 hours, if not more, a week, and it can be very difficult, but it's not impossible. I want to stress that fact. It's not impossible. I mean, I'm graduating in May, and it's rough and it gets on you a little bit, but it's nothing that you can't handle. I've noticed a lot of freshmen, and I'm not just saying freshmen athletes, a lot of freshmen that come to school have a hard time adjusting, and I think it really is, can be really hard on a freshman athlete to come in And if he's not redshirted, to experience all the pressure that's put on him right away, and a lot of times freshmen's grades will show because of it. And I really am all for freshman athletes redshirting their first year. I know everybody doesn't like that, but I think the pressure is so tremendous on a freshman athlete that I think it needs to be done.
You bring up a good point, Gene, as far as redshirting freshmen. Before I go any further on that question, we have a question here.
I guess I'm curious about, not even on the basketball team, when you miss 2 and 3 weeks of classes, how do your teachers feel about that? And how do you catch up? Because I know there's so much of a big deal about athletes and their academics.
Well, a lot of instructors, they realize that we're going, they don't really like that at all, just like, we don't like going up to them asking, is it all right if we make this assignment up, or what can we do, before we leave to catch up on our work. It's difficult. Like for instance, one of my teammates, Paul Dorfield, instructor wanted to not let him pass the class just because he was going. And I don't feel that's right. That's not his fault. We didn't make the schedule. All we do is play and go to school. So we just have to deal with that.
Do you find that most instructors have been sympathetic, and this is directed to everyone, do you find that most instructors have been sympathetic to you because of traveling you have to do, because of different games you have to play?
Yeah, I feel that some of them have. If you come to them before you leave and get the assignments and you do your assignment before you leave, I don't think there'll be any problems. But there are some that they're not going to go for that. They'll treat you just like you're a normal student, and I respect that because that's their job. We don't want any special privileges.
Anyone else want to respond to that?
I think most teachers are pretty understanding, but some of them get to be real sticklers when you're missing a test because you have to go. A girl on the track team a few years ago had to run the Big 8 championship meet, and her teacher wouldn't let her miss the test to run. And so she took her test and flew to the meet, which was in Lincoln, Nebraska, in her car, and got there 5 minutes before the race started.
Any other questions?
I'd like to ask, what do you feel is the climate on campus when you're in a losing streak or a down streak? Do you feel maybe conscious pressure or subconscious?
I think I can speak on that one. For myself and a lot of my teammates, I feel when we lose, we hate to go on campus. It seems like everybody's watching us and they're like, oh, they're losers. But we have to because we have to go to class or you won't be here. It seems like once you lose, everybody's against you. Like today, I feel for you sitting in here, even though we lost. I know it seems like if you don't perform well in some aspect, everybody's against you. But that could be our own feelings. But sometimes it shows.
I think that question reflects to how much that this university and other universities put the type of pressure on winning. And that's a big thing, where win at all costs, no matter what. And I think you hit a question on that because, like as he said, we feel that pressure when we don't win. It's like you've done something wrong. You're not totally a normal person when you do not win. So I think we need to sit back and also look at the issue of what are the price the athletes are paying for us to try and win at all costs.
I think maybe like with track, we can look at it in a different light because if you don't win the Big 8 in cross country or something, it's still not like you lost because there's 8 teams and it's all in a, and I just find more support from people on campus. I mean, we won the Big 8 cross country championships this year. I never had so many people notice that I was on the cross country team, and good job. And, if we don't do well, I don't hear anything about it, or, maybe someone will say, how did the meet go? But I don't feel any, I would never be embarrassed about it or anything like that.
Like I think with football on campus, you're not quite as visible as like people that play basketball. I mean, everyone knows who they are and what they look like. Whereas football, no, you got your helmet on, and no one really knows who you are. So I'm not really conscious about it at all.
I'd like to ask the panel members, when you speak, to grab one of the microphones that's closest to you and pull it towards you so everyone can hear what you're saying.
I just wonder, what's the NCAA law, you don't know this, maybe Max was saying, about not paying for supplies for athletes, if that's part of your schooling?
Well, I know I had a problem with this last year, a similar problem as Paul did. I'm a TCA major, telecommunicative arts, and I had to take a film class. And all of a sudden, the NCAA came up with a rule that the film I needed, which was 16 millimeter film for a motion projector camera, was considered an art object. And so I had to shell out $200 of my own money for this one class, just so I could shoot three 5-minute films. And I had partners too. I mean, it cost probably $800 for the whole semester, and we had to split it 4 ways. And I made unfortunate mistake, and we loaded the film backwards the first time, and that was a $100 mistake. And you know, I'm not harping on it. That's our own fault, but stuff like that, you know, that comes out of our own pockets. That's when you have to call mom up and go, "Hey, mom." You know, and not all athletes are probably as fortunate as I am. You know, I have parents that are willing to do that, but not everybody, and it's rough on them too. I'm not saying they have just money to send up to me every week, but some athletes are a lot more fortunate than others in that aspect, and I think that really seriously needs to be looked into, because if you're given a full scholarship to play at a university, it should be a full scholarship. There shouldn't be any leeway there. I mean, if you have an art object or whatever for a design class, if that's what you want to major in, you came here to play football or basketball or whatever, but you came here as a student first. And if you want to major in something, you should be able to major in it and have your supplies paid for. I mean, there should be no question about that right off.
Paul, let me just comment on that a little bit if I could. My name is Steve McDonald, I work in athletics and academics, and I simply wanted to clarify. I totally agree with what Gene is saying, by the way. Unfortunately, there is an NCAA rule that clearly prohibits the athletic department, not just obviously any athletic department, from purchasing supplies for courses. I think it's a ridiculous rule personally. I wish it's one that they would change, but nevertheless, it is a rule. We can purchase course-related textbooks only. Consequent, and 2 years ago, there was a proposal brought before the NCAA to attempt to change that particular rule, and it was defeated, unfortunately. It's a rule that I think needs to be reviewed again and changed. One of the proposals from 2 years ago was to change it simply to say course-related supplies for people who are majoring in a particular area. As Paul mentioned earlier, anybody in design or architecture in those areas, their supply costs are incredibly higher than their textbook costs. We can't pay for those supplies. I don't agree with the rule. We don't make the rule, but unfortunately it is an NCAA rule, and it's one we have to adhere to. It's one that we certainly hope to change, because it's truly unfair to student athletes in the NCAA.
Well, any other questions? Anybody have any other questions? We have one here.
Yeah, I'd like to know what role, if any, your coaches play in some of your academic decision-making. For example, do they give you academic guidance? Do they suggest what courses you take? And if they do play that role, do you feel comfortable?
They're paid to coach us, but I think we have a really strong support staff, and Steve McDonald and Kathy Lyons works with the football team exclusively. Well, not exclusively, she works with all sports, and they do their job, but it can be overwhelming for them sometimes too, because they're 2 and 3 and 4 strong, and they have to work with hundreds of athletes, and it can be a difficult job for them, but they get it taken care of, I think, fairly well. If it's really the athletes, he has to take the initiative. If he needs help, he can't wait until the last semester where in finals week coming up and say, oh, all of a sudden I need a tutor, I'm flunking this class. If you're having a problem, you go to Steve or Kathy or whoever, and they'll get somebody to help you with it. But a lot of times athletes don't take the initiative. They wait until the last, just like everybody else, I suppose, and they wait until the last minute. And you can't really blame anybody but the athlete for that. I mean, if you need the help, you ask for the help, and they'll do whatever it takes to get you the help. That's what I've always experienced here.
I feel that one of the strong points of Iowa State, which allowed me which is one of the reasons why I came to Iowa State, was because of the academic program. I think they have a very strong academic support for the athlete. As Gene was saying, if you want tutors, you can get tutors. And like for us, we have study tables several times out of the week. You have to maintain a certain grade point average to get out of study table. If you receive a C-, you go back into study table. So I think it's a very strong academic support here that will push the athlete that you, will inevitably end up succeeding because you have no choice or you'll be gone.
I think one thing that our coach, Vicki Mueller, is really good about is during the season, she'll make sure that she knows when majority of the athletes have exams. And if there's a lot of players that have exams coming up on, the next week, she'll usually, let us out of practice early or, give us the day off. And she's been, really good about helping us in that respect.
Any other questions? What? I have some ready in case anybody has their hand up.
Just curious, at the beginning of seasons, you probably all sit down and have individual goals for your season or maybe team goals. Does anyone ever sit down with you and maybe talk about your goals academically?
Yeah, I think I can speak on that as well. My tutor, Mary Ellen Boone, she's the head tutor for the men's basketball team. That's one thing she focused on, from the start. Most athletes get in their mind that when they come to school, when they get on scholarship and they come to a college, it's athletics first, athletics, then social life, then academics. It's reversed all the way around. But if you don't have your priorities straight, you won't last that long at any university. And I feel that that's one thing she emphasized throughout the whole year.
I think it's not really the coach's role to discuss your academic goals. I personally have my advisor for that. My advisor discusses my academic goals with me.
I have a question directed toward, I'm sorry, do you have a comment?
I was just gonna say, I think it's up to the athlete themselves to take the initiative. As Steve can, vouch, from day one that I've come in here, I've known what I wanted, how, and knew what to do in order to get there. And I think it's up to you as the athlete to take whatever steps needed in order to obtain what you want.
This is directed towards the whole panel. How do you feel about raising the requirements for an athlete at Iowa State, by Iowa State, raising them beyond what the requirements are for NCAA? I know that's been talked about. I'd just like to throw that out to the panel. I mean, say for instance, if the NCAA required that you maintain a 1.8 grade point average, and Iowa State decided to say, well, no, I think you should maintain a 2.2. What do you feel about that? Anybody?
I say no. I mean, they can encourage the NCAA to raise their guidelines, but I don't think it's up to us, out of all the Division I schools in the country, to all of a sudden decide that we're going to raise our guidelines, because I think it's going to hurt us in the long run. And it'll eventually help everyone if the guidelines are raised, but I think we have to raise them for everybody and not just have single universities having separate guidelines.
I think you'll find more athletes in junior college because a lot of athletes, that's a lot of their, for instance, inner city athletes that come out of inner cities, that's their way out, through college. There's the sports that they're getting recruited for, and a scholarship, and come to college and play basketball or football or whatever they might want to play. A lot of them look for professional careers. A lot of them don't have, the benefits at home or a stable family, and that's the only way out. I feel that's going to hurt them because a lot of people are not going to look forward to going to school then, because the ACT is nothing easy to take.
Any other questions? What about athletes always being in the public eye? I know one thing I got tired of seeing was anytime an athlete does anything, everybody always knows about it. And we hear about this type of thing all the time. And as I said, one athlete does one thing, and the whole campus will know about it, the whole city of Ames will know about it. What does the panel feel about that? Why is it that way, or do you feel that's wrong, or something?
I think when you decided to be a student athlete and you decided to come to a Division I school you made that choice to be in the public eye, and therefore you should take the responsibilities behind that and take responsible for your action. Now, I disagree with always being in the media, but I feel as if when we make a mistake, it's blown beyond a mistake. It's like we're not human enough to make a mistake. Now, and I think that's wrong, because it's like all of a sudden we've been elevated to a pedestal that these athletes cannot do anything wrong, and that's not. We're human just like everyone else. But I think you must also, I'm not gonna go out and try and rob someplace and I know I'm a student athlete and everybody gonna know as soon as I walk in there who I am. And that's, responsibility.
I think we're high profile people. I mean, for example, like basketball, they see us all on TV. They see us out here on campus. I mean, anything that I do, it'll get told. I mean, my coaches are here, Steve are here, Mary Ellen are here. I feel that that's something you have to accept. That's all part of being a student athlete. It could be good and bad. I don't like it when somebody go around and tell them everything I do, because I'm not gonna do good every day. So I don't like that.
But going along with accepting it, don't you think that the athletes are people too? I mean, they, will do things wrong just like anybody else will do things.
I agree with that.
I don't think it's bad that I disagree as to how it is handled. Say for instance that when we do end up doing something that is wrong, we get back to the point again, it being blown out of proportion. And I think that's where the problem is. When things get taken beyond, okay, now we got a delinquent athlete here, watch out, they're gonna be doing this or they're gonna be doing that, instead of saying, okay, they made a mistake.
Go ahead.
I agree with that, but I don't really mind being in the public eye. I kind of like that tension, really. But it's true you're in the public eye and all that, but you have to realize the consequences that one person can do. I mean, can mess up a whole reputation of a team, or we represent Ames, Iowa, and Iowa State University. If somebody screws up, I mean, that taints the whole community. It really does, as far as recruiting goes, as far as getting new athletes in here.
But is that fair? Is it fair for one athlete to be responsible for to represent the whole football team? Say if a football player was to do something wrong, is that fair to say, well, that's the Iowa State football team? Or is it fair to say that's Iowa State's program?
Well, no, it's not really fair, but it's a fact of life. I mean, it's not exclusive here. It's not exclusive anywhere, and people aren't going to change. People have their own opinions, and the athletes and the actions of anybody who's popular or in the public eye. It's not exclusive just to athletes. Anybody, a politician, anybody. It taints the university. It taints the whole system. So, but it's not really fair. But what can you do about it? People have their own opinions. I mean, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do about it. So you just have to deal with it.
I think the thing I disagree with is the fact that if an athlete commits a crime, it's printed in the paper as an athlete did it. And that automatically relegates it to the front page. Whereas if Common Joe committed the same crime, it'd be maybe on the second page.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have something to say, boss. Sure. I feel that although we're just student athletes, a lot of things a normal student can do here at school and it won't get blown out of proportion. If a student athlete does that, it'll be in every paper in Iowa and back at your hometown. I don't feel that's right. That's not right. Our team have pressure on us from things that's happened in the past. I don't even know what happened, and I still have pressure on us. So that's not right, but that's what, to each his own. Everybody has their own opinions about it.
We have one here, and then...
I wanted to know if any of the minorities feel kind of funny when they come here, because in the inner city you tend to play with all black schools, and when you come to Iowa State, you have to intermingle with another different crowd, and you're used to a whole different culture. Is that hard for minority students as well as majority, and are there any racial factors in any of the teams?
Nah, I don't feel. I mean, I've played with, you know, everybody, you know, black, white, it doesn't matter, you know. I don't think that's a problem. If you love to play the game and you got to accept everybody, you know, we all a unit together, you know, that's not a big problem.
I think on the court it's not a problem as far as interracial or anything, but I think once you step off the court and as far as social life and anything else, then that's when that comes into play or as to a factor, because you have to adjust. I mean, you're coming to a majority white school. It's face it, it's not many of us on campus, and so it is a big change, especially if you come from an inner city or you come from a place where there are a lot of blacks or minority. So I think it is a factor that you have to adjust, and it was a big factor for me to adjust. And I went to a majority of half and half high school.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, if the rest of this world had mentality like athletes, where we all had to play one big game to get along, and we all played it without worrying about what everybody is, we all played to win, and this whole world would be a hell of a lot better.
It seems like there's a lot of complaining on money here, and a lot of students would love to have scholarships, whether it be based or academic based, and some of you are saying, hey, there's a lot of pressure of winning here. Well, it would make sense if you don't want to have that pressure of winning, they're going to come back with a scholarship. So what about those other students that are, you know, working at parties and have trouble working in their academics too?
Are you talking about regular students? I mean, are you talking about athletes or students in general?
Students in general that don't have the money, that would look at your guys' scholarship and say, wow, that'd be great, you know, I'd love to have that, but I can't get it. I
feel that we realize, you know, there are a lot of students that are not on scholarship, but that's not really our fault. I mean, we're proud to accept what we have. You know, like for instance, if I ain't have a lot of opportunities myself. You know, I didn't think I was gonna go to college coming out of high school, but I knew I was gonna graduate from high school. You know, I kept on trying to play basketball, and finally, you know, I'm here now. But I was determined to get here. That's not. I don't think that's our problem. My advice to them is that if they want a scholarship, they should try something that they're good in and try, you know, keep working hard and try to earn their scholarship or something.
Well, I'd just like to say, while those people working at Hardee's, we were all working in the gym or out on the track. I mean, I put in a lot of hours in order to get this scholarship. And I put in, you know, a lot of time in high school that I could have been doing other things. I was in the gym or working out or doing something. And I can speak for everyone here. We worked extremely hard to get where we are now.
Yeah, I agree with Tracy, and I mean, I'm not on a full scholarship, and I still work in the summer. And, you know, I don't have time to work during the school year because of school and, you know, my sport and stuff. But when some people look at athletes and they think, well, they don't work hard and they just get that handed to them. I mean, we had to make these opportunities for ourselves, or else we wouldn't have them. And they make their opportunity maybe by working at Hardee's and they're making their money, or else they can make their opportunity some other way by getting some other kind of scholarship.
Any other questions? What about communication with students on campus in your major? You find it hard to do that? Because I know a lot of students usually did things between 4 and 6 o'clock in the evening, and all that time we're always in practice. And then when it's time for us to do homework, it was always after 7, after 9, or the next day. But anyway, do you feel that, have you had problems with dealing with students in your major and sort of working with them?
One problem I think is really difficult for student athletes is the fact that when they declare their major, a lot of their classes aren't offered until later in the day when we have to be at practice. And we do get one advantage over other students, and where we do get to register earlier than the rest of them, and I think that is fair because I mean, we're putting in a lot of time and we don't have the opportunities to go to class at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whenever. And even then, it still gets very difficult. You know, I'm winding up towards graduation, and I had to really struggle and fight to get these classes I need to graduate because, you know, they're offered at strange times, and I'm in a particular situation here where I'm being recruited for professional sports too, which is a whole nother ball of wax. But But it's very trying, and it's difficult when you first declare your major to try to get these classes that you need because something's offered at 2:30 or whenever, but you just have to work around that.
I agree with what Gene was saying also, because when you get to be a senior, like for example, I have a class coming up as soon as I leave out of here. I won't get out to 3, and I have practice at 3:45. You might have a class at 5. I feel that we should get the right to get to classes first.
Anyone else have a response here? What about getting back to freshmen? Freshmen being redshirted once they're here. Gene brought that up, and I said we we're going to get back to that. I'd like to know what does everyone else feel about that? Do you think it's a good idea to have freshmen mandatory being redshirted, or start with this?
I don't agree with that at all. I think when you're a freshman here, you should be allowed to play because most students don't have a problem.
I think it depends on the sport. Certain sports coming in as a freshman, you're really not going to get to play that much. And you're going to have the problems of adjusting, first of all, because you're away from your parents for the first time for some people. And then and other problems that you may encounter while being here, I think maybe, yes, it might be a good idea to say, well, let's put them on a red shirt so that they can have time to adjust academically as well as mentally.
I don't feel that's good either, for the simple fact that when you're a freshman, you're coming in out of high school and you're redshirting and you get to go home here in all these different breaks and you can do whatever you want to, but you still have to practice with the team or whatever. They're not going to focus on that. Like for example, playing basketball every day, going to practice and everything, that's a motivator for me academically. For the simple fact that I know I have to put in academically in order to keep playing. So it's just like they combine together. So I don't think that's good either. And considering football and basketball, it take you, if you sit out a redshirt year, a freshman year, it'll take you to your junior to get back in the groove of things. It was hard for me to come from junior college just to play in the Hill and play Big A basketball. It took me a while. I sat out half a year.
As far as football goes, I redshirted my freshman year, and I think it helped me a lot. So when I got here, I'm not too big now, but when I got here, I was really pretty skinny. And it gave me a year to physically mature, and that helped me a lot as far as taking pressure off me. The only pressure I had really was to, go to practice. I didn't have anything to shoot for or anything. It was kind of a boring year as far as that goes. It was kind of like a job. Every day I had nothing to look forward to, but overall, as I look back, it helped me out a lot. I concentrated more academically, and it got me off to a good start.
What about, talk about more NCAA infractions and NCAA cracking down. What about, say, these instances we hear where one of the coaches did something wrong at a particular university, and the student being recruited is penalized. He can't play for that whole year. Or, the student has to sit out a while. Is that really the student athlete's fault? Say that the coach did something that was wrong. Is that really the student's fault? Say for instance you have a student comes from a background where they didn't have much money. Coach flashes $5,000 in front of his face. The house was about to fall down. They needed some food in the house, and he took the money. And then he or she made a mistake later of telling somebody else. Is that really the athlete's fault? Should the athlete be blamed for that? What do you think?
But Paul, that goes back to the question, should athletes be paid?
True.
If we receive some type of, because it is a job, which you keep hearing us stress, because it is a job for us. It's just like we clock in every day and every night and whatnot. If we got paid, that student, you wouldn't have the infraction of accepting money, or some of the infractions that are being broken would not be broken if certain other things was taken care of.
So you're the coach, I'm the player, you're recruiting me. You give me money, I take it. Then somebody finds out. Should they blame you or should they blame me? Should I be the one to miss a year of competition, or should they have you sit out and you can't coach a year?
I would say you would blame the coach. You can't really blame the athlete because he or she is in a certain predicament, and this is the only way out, and you're offering them a way. I'm going to take it. That's a matter of survival. So if anyone should infraction be imposed upon, it should be the coaches.
I don't know if too many people that wouldn't take $5,000 thrown in their face just for coming to. I don't know very many people where they would say no in that instance. I think I think sometimes the NCAA is a little lenient on coaches that do that. I think if they do that and they're going to punish the athlete, well, they should punish the coach. They should ban him altogether completely. I mean, she was talking about athletes getting paid earlier. Well, I don't think it would make a difference anyway if we were getting paid or not, because somebody's always trying to do something to get ahead in the sport. So even if we were getting paid, somebody's still going to be cheating. It goes on everywhere. It's not exclusive just to athletics or anything like that. But people are going to do whatever it takes to get ahead, and the people who usually initiate that are coaches or something like that. And I don't know how you can blame somebody from an inner city who doesn't have a lot. They throw all this money in a car or anything that's based. I mean, I don't know two people that would say no to that, because you want to take a chance. I mean, it's there for you. It's something you might need. So I don't think you can really blame an athlete for that.
Well, I think this goes beyond even getting money. I think it goes, there's real infractions like, the amount of visits the coach can make to you and things like that the athlete aren't even aware of. I mean, if you've seen the NCAA book, which I have, it's huge. And there's so many little, 51JX, there's so many little tiny rules that the student athlete has no idea about. Like in my situation, I had to sit out a year because I didn't know I was supposed to take my ACT on a specific date. So I don't think that really should penalize the athlete. The coaches should be more aware of the book and the rules.